I accuse. Letter to the Chancellor Angela Merkel of the Federal Republic of Germany, May 2014. Dear Chancellor Merkel, your post-war predecessors and you have earned a reputation for claiming to have strengthened Germany's status as a democratic nation and one which values human rights and justice. It is my sad duty to inform you that your claims seem hollow and little more than public relations exercises. I draw your attention to the miscarriage of justice concerning the death of my son Jeremiah Duggan in extremely suspicious circumstances in Wiesbaden, 2003. Jeremiah was a British student in Paris at the British Institute and the Sorbonne when he was persuaded to attend a peace conference in Germany. He soon discovered that he was amongst right-wing extremists, followers of Lyndon LaRouche, a convicted criminal whose message was that it was the British and their agents, the Jews, who were fomenting the war in Iraq to bring about world destruction. At 5:25 on March the 27th, 2003, Jeremiah phoned me from Wiesbaden, begging to be saved, saying he was in danger of his life, from members of the LaRouche group. Within the hour, his dead body was found beside the road, close to the LaRouche offices. The Wiesbaden authorities, led by police investigator Inspector Schecher, decided there and then that Jeremiah's death was suicide and that they did not have to investigate. They declared they were not concerned with the circumstances surrounding the death. And as a result, I have found myself in the impossible position of being a mother having to investigate the death of my own son. I have evidence that the LaRouche group stated that Jeremiah was an enemy who deserved to die, and that immediately prior to his death he had been in the offices of the LaRouche organization and that he had been attacked and chased. In spite of compelling expert evidence uncovered, contradicting the police findings, and in a chilling echo of the Hessen Department of the Bundesamt für Verfassungsschutz, who failed to investigate the horrendous Donnermorde or kebab killings, the Wiesbaden authorities have refused to properly investigate Jeremiah's death. I have seen how the Wiesbaden Prosecution Service and the Wiesbaden Police Department have manipulated the judicial system to prevent a proper investigation. Over 11 years, they have spread false and misleading information, covered up and destroyed crucial evidence, hidden the identities of people suspected of harming Jeremiah, attempted to bury the case in delay, obstruction, and falsehoods. In December 2012, the higher court in Hessen, the OLG, gave a verdict that the Wiesbaden Police Department had failed in their duties to properly investigate, and the OLG stipulated that the police should act with urgency to set up mutual aid to get the people in France who were lost with Jeremiah investigated, that the circumstances leading to Jeremiah's death should be independently and thoroughly investigated, that the real possibility of collective harming by the LaRouche organization should be independently and thoroughly investigated. 17 months on, my lawyers have been forced to register a complaint because of their continued obstruction. It is only the third time in the last 60 years of the history of the Federal Republic that such a ruling by a German court has been handed down. Therefore, it is even more shocking that the Wiesbaden authorities continue to flagrantly ignore the court orders. A measure of the integrity of a state is in how it brings to justice its own agents of authority. If Germany wishes to demonstrate to the world that it is a just and non-racist country, it is now that it must abide by its own and international codes of conduct, justice and law. I accuse Chancellor Angela Merkel of presiding over the administration which shields those who corrupt their officers of state, an administration which connives at the abuse of power by police and prosecutors, in that there is no workable provision for an independent investigation of the police and prosecutors themselves, an administration which tolerates institutional racism. I accuse Chief Prosecutor Andreas Winkelmann, deceiving my lawyers into believing that he would abide by the December 2012 decision of the Oberlandesgericht, the OLG, that the case should be opened and that a fully independent investigation be carried out, allowing the reappointment of Inspector Schecher, the very officer who in the first instance had lied, destroyed and covered up evidence and blocked a proper investigation. I accuse Chief Prosecutor Andreas Winkelmann that he gave a false undertaking that if we dropped our complaint against Prosecutor Schick-Jensen and that she, Prosecutor Schick-Jensen, would no longer deal with the case, he renegated on this undertaking in spite of having been informed by our lawyers that this was the very prosecutor who admitted to us that she closed the case without reading the files. In contempt of the ruling of court, he allowed the appointment of the same police officer, Inspector Schecher, to conduct yet another deeply flawed and corrupt investigation. I accuse Prosecutor Schlosser of being complicit in sustaining a bogus investigation of my son Jeremiah's death, of failing to comply with the ruling of the OLG court that ordered her to carry out an investigation with urgency and speed. 17 months after the OLG verdict, she still has not set up mutual aid assistance in order to interview possible suspects, named suspects and witnesses in France. I accuse Inspector Schecher of giving deliberately misleading information in a letter to the authorities, in which he stated there had been a post-mortem, when this was a falsification, as no doctor had performed a post-mortem on Jeremiah's body, and thus it was uncertain how the injuries were sustained. I accuse Inspector Schecher of deliberately misleading the authorities by describing Jeremiah's injuries as if he were a qualified doctor, and in doing so, omitting to mention the absence of vehicle contact marks on the body, the absence of human body impact marks on the vehicles. I accuse Inspector Schecher of deliberately withholding a document from the prosecutor files which quoted a Dr. Paul who certified that Jeremiah was dead at the scene and who stated that a formal post-mortem should be carried out, as it was questionable that the body was run over. I accuse Inspector Schacher of criminal negligence and deception in that in 2003 he made no crime investigation of the alleged crash scene. By telephone, he gave the traffic officers who were at the alleged crash scene permission to allow the drivers of the cars, who were alleged to have run over Jeremiah, to leave the scene, and thus failed to interview them or any other material witnesses, nor obtained verifiable witness statements. He destroyed crucial evidence for which he was responsible, namely Jeremiah's clothes, which could have demonstrated that he was not hit by a car. He failed in his duty to restore Jeremiah's clothes and shoes to me, in spite of my legal right to have these returned to me and my request to do this. He failed to trace the source of Jeremiah's phone call to me, in which Jeremiah named the group threatening him. He failed to investigate whether or not Jeremiah was in the EIR offices belonging to the LaRouche news agency, which are very near to where the body was found. I accuse the Wiesbaden officers of the prosecution, through its prosecutors Brandt, Winkelmann, Binnock, Versa, Schick-Jensen and Schlosser, of institutional racism, and that in spite of evidence in their position going back over 30 years, and in spite of being fully informed that the LaRouche network was a destructive extremist group posing a threat to the individual and a danger to society, with its targets of hate, the British and the Jews. They have passed this off as not their concern, and they decline to investigate possible crimes. I accuse the Federal Republic of Germany of being part of the system that fails to provide an unbiased and full investigation into the assault and unlawful killing of my son, Jeremiah Duggan, of being complicit in and turning a blind eye to the racist attitudes and programs of the LaRouche Group, which is named in the Encyclopedia Judaica as a major source of masked anti-Semitic theories in the world. As a foreigner in Germany, for 11 years I have been lied to, obstructed, and denied my rights by the authorities. 11 years ago, Jeremiah and I both suffered the loss of his life, and for 11 years we have both suffered the denial of justice in Germany. In Germany, justice is treated with contempt. In Germany, Jeremiah Duggan's human rights to a proper investigation into his death has been denied. Until all the perpetrators of crimes are brought to justice, Germany is on trial. I accuse the German Department of Justice, Chancellor Angela Merkel, I accuse you. I'm Erica Duggan, and I'm here today outside the German embassy. I have just handed in a letter addressed to Angela Merkel, which I read out at our press conference today in the coroner's office in Barnet.